Good evening and welcome to Hot Topics from the Soul. I'm your host, Dr. Valerie Parker Hagan, and I have my co host with me.
And lovely good evening to each and every one of you. Dr. J.R. Thicklin here, and we're excited in the midst of some very interesting times. Yet and still we remain steadfast, we remain excited, we remain meaningful, and we're definitely going to remain relevant.
Absolutely. Tonight, our show is The War of Agendas, but I want to take a moment to ask the audience to continue praying for Reverend Jesse Jackson's family and also to all our military who've lost their lives over the last couple of weeks serving and protecting our country. Let us not forget them, and also let us pray for those that are about to go into battle and are standing by in the front line just to make sure that we stay free.
Yeah, definitely our hearts and our condolences goes out to all of our members of the military. And we say that in a sense of just one big unit, but we must understand that they represent families. They represent
Right.
sons and daughters, dads and moms, aunts and uncles, children. And for that reason, war should never be taken lightly by any means. And war has always existed in this earth in one form or another. Throughout scripture, we hear wars and rumors of wars. We've seen some wars being fought in many different ways for many, many years. But I say to us in this day and time that if you were to poll most of the people in this country right now, they could not really give you a clear definition why we're in this war or why
Mhm.
these wars have taken place. Those of us that are old enough, we remember, as a child, I vaguely remember the war in Vietnam, and I remember how torn the country was about the war in Vietnam. And I remember even people like Cassius Clay, who we know as Muhammad Ali, basically they stripped him of his title because of the fact he did not want to go. He did not want to go. And whether you want to call him a draft dodger of a man who realized the fact, why am I going over there killing innocent people that has nothing to do with me? And the fact that I can go over there and do that and come back to America and not even be recognized as a man. And so there were many different reasons people did not go. We understood that Dr. King spoke up against the Vietnam War. He thought about the fact of so many things that we put on the line. But one of his most famous quotes dealt with the fact of really warning the country as a nation. When we invest all of our riches and money inside a war and war machines and things like that, the outcome cannot be great. And so I say that to say that wars that we're entering is not just wars for a spelled out reason. Oftentimes wars are all about agendas. It is about the agendas that one country or one leader has toward another. And we see that played out on multiple levels, not only in physical war, military war, but we see that played out even in our lives inside of a relationship. So it's really about a war of agendas.
Yeah, actually, genders are things that or actions that make possible impossible things. We're a perfectly imperfect nation. Everybody has their own thoughts, their own way of thinking. As individuals, we have our own thought process. And it goes that way even into raising our family, raising our children, and in
Absolutely.
relationships when we're trying to forge forward to marriage. There's always an agenda of some kind, and it's up to us to cause or create a balance where it makes sense, not only for ourselves, but for those around us. So, what are the agendas of individuals and not just, okay, the American people, the other countries? Not just what are their agendas and what is our agendas, but where do we stand as individuals and how are we going to move forward to create a synergy with them amongst ourselves so that we can continue to thrive and function in this land of the free.
You said a mouthful because what you're really saying is very simple. You're talking about agendas. Now, we all have agendas to a certain degree. But what happens is this, is that we start looking at when we become self-absorbed. And when we
Mm,
become self-absorbed, that means that there's a root of selfishness that comes with it. So being self-absorbed is just that. It's because of the fact we become so preoccupied with ourselves. We become so preoccupied in what's right for us that we don't ever ask what's right for humanity because we tune in to WIIFM, what's in it for me. And I know that. Listen, I'm going to put the cards on the table. This is not a Democrat or a Republican issue necessarily. This is a heart issue. And what I mean by that is this. It's amazing that we start hearing buzzwords like America first, America first. Well, that's not how America was formed. It wasn't. This nation has been a nation of what? Immigrants. Let's say it together. Immigrants. Let's say it together. Immigrants. People came here looking for a dream. They came here looking for a better way of life. They came here. An interesting thing, many of those people helped build this nation. Now, the only footnote to this story that makes it different is that the black man, the African who was brought here against their will, they're the ones that did not choose to come here. They was brought here against their will, and yet it still helped build the place. And after we have flourished and we've learned this thing about power, now we're living in a time where we're talking about America first, and now we resemble other nations. We're self-absorbed. We're self-reliant about ourselves. So we have to be very careful about that because self-absorbing causes us to become very much, if you would, unsympathetic and unempathetic to others' needs and others' agendas and to what others are doing. So I say that to say this to us. When we look at this thing at the very root of all conflict, at the very root of all conflict, and I'm not just talking about physical war, I'm talking about inside a relationship. At the root of it, it's not merely disagreement, but it's competing agendas. It's about what I want versus what you want. When the pursuit of money, when it's the pursuit of power and the influence becomes so overwhelming, it becomes greed. It becomes the dominant factor. It becomes what leads us and directs us. And that's where we are now. You know, there are many things that have happened. And so many times we are so self-absorbed, if you would, that we start feeling like we have to choose sides. And so we start following political ideologies that does not line up even with common sense. We start following political ideologies that really are harmful to us as a people as a whole. So when I talk about that, the pursuit of money, the influence, it becomes such a dominant factor in our lives and a force that even hard that individuals and systems become self-absorbed. And when they become self-absorbed, they lose sight of the dignity, the value, and the existence of others. And that's what's happened. We have lost sight of the dignity, the value, if you would, and the existence of others. And that is why we have to check ourselves at the door. See, all wars and conflicts starts internally before it's ever external. It's an internal war that's going on. And so what we understand that the internal corruption manifests itself gradually, but extremely, and it manifests itself externally. And when it manifests itself externally, it manifests itself as broken relationship. It manifests itself as exploitation, and ultimately war happened. Now, listen, let me be very clear. Be very clear. What we've seen happen here over the last several months has been something out of some type of novel or some type of book. And I say that to say this. We saw what happened in Venezuela. You can make up every excuse that you want to. Stop lying to us, though. This is not about Venezuelan people. This is about money. This is about controlling all. This is about controlling things. It's about that self-absorption that I continue to talk about. Our love and our greed. It was the late Jimi Hendrix, who's not known as a prophet, who talked about and said, when the power of love becomes greater than the love for power, then the world will know peace. But that's not where we are today. It's about dominance. It's about control. And we think that it looks strong. We talk about dominance and control, and yet it's still, we're sacrificing lives to be out there to prove an agenda. An agenda, not one that is thoughtful and mindful of everyone, but one that is very much of itself. So we have to understand the first war happens within the human heart. That is where the first war is waged. The first battlefield of the agenda is internal, not external. What do I mean by that? Self-absorption becomes, self-absorption happens when the heart becomes so consumed with self-preservation, self-promotion, self-satisfaction, instead of asking what is right, we ask the question, what benefits me? And that's where we are, whether in world politics, geopolitics, or we're talking about the fact of inside a relationship. When the desire for power, wealth, or control takes root, empathy goes out of the back door. It begins to erode, and the humanity of others becomes secondary to our own personal gain. And that's where we are today. Listen, there's not a war that is fought that people aren't losing their lives. It is a travesty to see the number of innocent lives that are being lost because we're all being this pawn on this chessboard. Listen to me very carefully. This is not about what we're reading in the mainstream news. And I don't care, even if we look at it and try to look at it from a prophetic lens and even from a apocalyptic lens, we still have to go back to the humanity of what's happening, or should I say the inhumanity of what's happening here. So when we understand when the desire for power, and that's what this is, the desire for dominance. This is about dominance. It's about world dominance. It's about dominating certain areas in there. And listen, Iran is who Iran is. They are who they are inside of that. But let me say something to you. Let's not be so short memory. If we're talking about natural war, remember back in the day, remember the Persian Gulf War? Remember the war? We went looking for the weapons of mass destruction that never came, that was never there from the beginning, because the war was started with an agenda that had nothing to do with the betterment of our country whatsoever. But that war caused thousands upon thousands of innocent lives that put themselves on the battlefield. Why? Because it was a war of agendas. It's agendas. I honor the sacrifice of every service personnel out there. Listen, I salute you. There's not one of you that I'm not proud of and thankful to for your sacrifice for this country. Because you're special people. Because it doesn't make sense to me at times. Oh, we're protecting America. Really? Right about now, it sounds like to me that literally we're guard dog and we're running with Israel. And before you come at me about Israel, the state of Israel is not Israel that we're reading about in the Bible. I'll leave that right to where it is. That's not a theocracy over there. That's not ran by God and them subscribing to God and faith. This is a whole state. There's just a democracy in the Middle East that oftentimes have resulted and reflecting the same type of corruption that we're seeing right now. The same type of corruption that is happening right now. So what I want you to understand is this, is that when we begin to look at these things, there's wars that are going on. Oftentimes, what begins with ambition, watch this, the acceleration of power, the rise of power. Power can be very addictive. So what begins, if you would, as ambition can slowly evolve into greed, and greed into domination. History continues to repeat itself. History repeatedly shows us that the greatest destruction in the world has not come from ignorance, but from unrestrained ambition. The greatest destruction in the world has not come from ignorance. It's not because we're ignorant, but it's come from, if you would, folks, the greed from unrestrained ambition, disconnected from compassion. Now you put all of this together. And by the way, I welcome your comments. If you have any questions, please put your question there in the comment box. Technical difficulty. Dr. Val will be back on shortly, but I need you to put your comment there. Understand, the internal war becomes external when the heart decides. When the heart decides my agenda matters more than your existence. That's when the real war starts. Let me say this again. The internal war begins when the external when the heart decides that my agenda matters more than your existence. See, let's not get it twisted. It's amazing we start using terms like patriots and patriotic, and somehow or another we try to twist patriotism with Christianity and the followers of Christ, and they just don't go together, do they? They don't go together at all, because one is very much self-driven, and where the other is spirit-driven. One is self-driven by our own ambitions, our own desires. Listen, America first doesn't ring to me the way that it may ring to some folks. Because what I've seen is a nation that has become more and more self-absorbed, more and more greedy. Man, we've gone a long ways from send us your poor, send us your needy, send us those individuals. Now, my goodness, we're destroying. We use names, we minimize, we destroy, we ostracize, we put down, we castigate. We are not friendly to the stranger, and we're not doing the things that we're commanded to do. And we call it patriotism. When you hear people stand and brag about killing people and brag about destroying people as if it's just a walk in the park, it says a lot about our hearts. About our hearts. When you look at a school of children being destroyed and you don't have the gumption to say, listen, we apologize. That was not meant, but rather we will dodge around it. It says a lot about our heart. Don't tell me in God we trust. In power is what we trust. And that's Absolutely. What happens. It is the consumption and being preoccupied with power, desire, the corruption, and it totally minimizes other people's existence. And that's what happened. It's the war of agendas, folks. This is a war of agenda. Let me ask you a question. Where will the United States be any better after this war? Were we any better after Iraq? What happened to the weapons of mass destruction? We never found them because they never existed. It was a false report, but guess what? Look at the follow the trail. Look who got enriched from all those governmental contracts. Look who got enriched. What I'm saying once again, the bottom line is greed, it's power, it's money. And when it gets to the place that we don't mind who dies in order for us to get it, it is a real sign of our decline and our moral failure in this country. Welcome back, Dr. Val.
Absolutely, Dr. J. My apologies. I had some technical difficulty, but that's okay. You held it down. That's why we have a powerful co-host here. But, also want to draw the attention to individuals so that they can be aware of cyber attacks on our personal levels, not just globally where we are now or nationally or here in the US. We have to be concerned about cyber attacks to our finances, to our health, to our, the airlines, our transportations. All these things are at risk because we are at war. Anything is possible. Remember 9/11, nobody thought that something like that could happen. And here we were, 9/11. World Trade Center went down, thousands of lives lost, and we had to rebuild. Even though we weren't there nationally, we had to rebuild, and we had to trust again. So, the war of agendas, what is it who is it benefit?
Yes. And that is something to look deep into, because that war of agendas, once again, like I said, the elements of it is not just geopolitical, but it's also the things inside of our relationships, right? The same principle that fuels our global conflict also destroys our personal relationships. What do you mean by that? Healthy relationship is about mutual regard, mutual sacrifice, and empathy. That's what a healthy relationship is. But when individuals become self-absorbed, you're going to hear me say that more and more again, relationships then become what? Arenas of negotiation, but also arenas of rather than spaces of love. Arenas of what? Negotiation rather than spaces of love. I've been thinking about this, and I'll tell you what inspired me today, really inspired me and made me start looking at this. It was a message by Bishop Henry Fernandez. This latest message, and I listened to it.
Powerful message.
It was a powerful message. Listen, it wasn't a very long message. I mean, I was all tuned up and just loving it. Then it ended. I'm like, no. It was a powerful message because it spoke to us in a way. And it made me think in some of the examples that he's given, how we have been acculturated even inside of our relationships, right? How do we see relationship? Why do we even get married? We don't hear things like covenant. We hear the thing about WIIFM, what's in it for me? And
Mm-hmm.
so instead of partnership, we have competition inside of our relationship. So people stop asking the question, how can we grow together? And they start asking, how can I win?
Hmm.
That's why let me make sure I get myself together. You know, one thing that Bishop Hernandez said in that message that stood out to me when he talked about relationship and marriages and couple, and he said to the folks that when you understand that marriage is not the thing that you're saying that it is, you got to understand you don't get married to someone just to say, listen here, they got to have six figures, they got to have all these things here, and all that is just for you to marry, get in the relationship, and then, hey, when you don't like it anymore, you know you're going to get 50-50 of what he has. That's not what marriage is about.
Mm-hmm.
That's not covenant. That's not those type things. So when we stop asking the question, how can we grow together? It is replaced by these negotiations. It's replaced by all those things like, how can I win? So it becomes me, myself, and I. It's once again the war of what? Agendas. It's the war
Mm-hmm.
of agendas. And that's what happened when two self-centered agendas collide. When two self-centered agendas collide, we end up with this external manifestation of war.
Mm-hmm. You know, at the top of the year, Dr. J, I said that this is going to be the most powerful year of revival we have ever seen
Yes.
because it's going to cause us to go to our knees. It's going to cause us to trust one another. It's going to
Yes.
cause us to dig deep and to love as the Bible says we should love. Yeah, yeah, there's people that say they don't believe in the Bible and this and that, but just your humanistic nature of wanting to help and wanting to serve is going to be made manifest. Guess what?
Yes.
Because tragedy is coming.
It
When they
is.
say peace and safety, there will be sudden destruction. It will come from every side, not just with armory and guns, but there will be wars, there will be financial declines, there will be cyber attacks, there will be health attacks. There's going to be things that's going to affect every family in America, whether you're rich or you are poor or in between. Everybody's going to be affected by someone, especially when we're in a state of war because of the different agendas, because there's going to be family members that are going to have to be deployed to defend and protect us, our front line. And when that barrier is broken, then we have to stand together and we have to be able to rise up and say, no, you won't interfere. You will not take, you will not destroy our families. You will not destroy our country. So there will be an uprising. May not be in my lifetime, but it will surely come in the lifetime of my children and children's children. It is here. We are at the gate. We are at the door. So what are we going to do right now at this moment? What are we going to do to cause this shift in the dynamics of what's being thrown at us right now? How are we going to stand? You know, in our community today, we had to vote just for bonds. A simple thing is bonds, and you know, people don't even come out for that. They don't realize that when we have these local elections, these small elections in our cities, in our
Oh yeah,
communities,
those are
it
the major
is the
ones.
one. It is actually major because if the city has to spend out money, taxpayer money, to
Absolutely.
fix roads and erect trees, then our taxes go up.
Absolutely.
So these small governments, don't turn your head at them or wicked and say, oh, yeah, that's just not for me. It is for everybody in every community. When there is an election, do not give up your right to go and vote. So, and then the main ones that are complaining are the ones that don't even go out and vote.
You hit it on the head. I was looking at the comment there. I see Derek Scott put some comments there that are absolutely true. And you know what's interesting? He quoted Second Chronicles 7:14,
Yes,
and
of my people.
yeah, and we hear that. But you know what's interesting today? It's becoming more and more difficult to distinguish who say they are God's people and those who are God's people. Because, see, here's the real thing about it. If we truly are praying and seeking God, not seeking an agenda, not seeking political alignment and ideologies. We have all these labels: far left, far right, and the left is just as wrong as two left shoes, and the right is just as wrong as two right shoes. And yet and still, we will abandon our convictions and our Christian principle because of the fact we want to follow an elephant or a donkey. And I continue to say that our allegiance as believers is not to an elephant or a donkey, but literally it is allegiance to a lamb. For behold, the Lamb of God that taketh away the sins of the world. And then when we understand, once again, all that's in the world is the lust of the eye, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. Going back to the three things that are the power. When we, once again, the war of agendas again, when self-absorption expands beyond individual, it becomes institutional. And so now institution is what sets rules. Government does so. How is it? Less than a month ago, there's a whole assembly of this new board of peace. And less than a month, you got war breaking out everywhere. There's a reason because of the fact this is also the season of exposure. So what's in them is coming out of them. What's inside of them is being exposed. So remember, it was last June that Iran was bombed, and boy, we obliterated them. Operation what was it, Sledgehammer or whatever it was. We destroyed them. We obliterated them.
I'm not impressed with these names that cause our children and our fathers and mothers to be at war and their lives being taken away and at stake and families destroyed because you want to have a quick name. These are not tokens. These are not pawns. Well, we become pawns. We become pawns because we're sent out when we shouldn't be sent out just because you want to speak something. So, remember that they're human beings that belong to families that you're sending out senselessly.
Dr. Val, let me say this because I think it's worth saying. And this is something, check it out for yourself. Throughout history, nations and leaders have justified wars under the banner of security, ideology, liberation. But yet beneath all of those narratives often lies simply the pursuit of power, territory, resources, or influence. When we see someone who would sacrifice lives because they want to look like they're strong and know everything, listen, the Bible declared there's wisdom in a multitude of counsel. And when you're really looking for wisdom, you don't eliminate everybody that disagree with you. You need some people in the circle that will bring you back into some type of balance. Other than that, you do, whether you don't want to be called a dictator or not, you start demonstrating dictator type trait. You start demonstrating authoritarian type of action. And so when we understand, folks, this is where I'm going back. Let me speak to the church. Forget about Democrat. Forget about Republican. Let's talk about what's right.
Yes.
Versus wrong. What's right versus wrong. Stop going along with these same old narratives. And listen, your eyes have got to be open. Some of us, we get what I call Israel scared. We hear Israel and always, oh my God, blessing it. Listen, you're going to understand that piece of land over there, the state of Israel, is not necessarily the people of Israel that the Bible speaks of. God is not the center of their world. Yes, Netanyahu is just as much of, he's got a lot of crooked things going on there as well. He has his own agenda as well. There are innocent lives that are being lost at his hand as well. And
I don't want to be caught up in a reality show of war.
And that's exactly what it is.
It's a reality show of war, and I don't want to be caught up, and I don't want our family and friends to be subject to that. But Dr. J, You mentioned that I sent you a message. It was by Henry Fernandez. The message
Mhm.
was, "It's bigger than me." So
Yeah,
you can Google that on YouTube, and it is powerful. It is called "It's Bigger Than Me." It is a powerful message, and I mean, it transcends beyond borders. It doesn't matter what
yes,
denomination or anything you belong to, but it
exactly.
speaks to the heart and of man, so that we can get back to the foundations, which is love. All our money says, "In God we trust." I think it's time to get back to trusting Him.
I'm going to say this, and I think this is what is so important. I want to say this so much to everyone, and it's a very simple question. When leadership prioritizes dominance over humanity, people become collateral damage,
Mm,
and that's what's happening. When leadership prioritizes dominance over humanity, people become collateral damage in someone else's ambition and someone else's dream of being seen as the greatest, and someone else's desire to try to seem like they're strong, and someone else's a movement of trying to prove a point. Listen to me very carefully, folks. It's time to really, and this is not religious, this is relational. This is the time now that our eyes of our understanding need to be enlightened, that we may know what is the hope of its call. America, hear me as I say this to you. The next 60 to 90 days are going to be very, very, very revealing times. Revealing times. You can choose to continue to walk in blindness and believe all of the rhetoric that you're seeing and justify the political theater and continue to act like we're blind, or you're going to be awakened to a reality that you have been determined to ignore until empathy comes back, until we come back to the place of compassion. Jimi Hendrix is known as a great musician, but Jimi Hendrix was also a smart man. And I often think about what he said. He says, when the power of love becomes greater than the love for power, then the world will know peace.
hmm.
And right now we're inverted. We want to dominate. And sometimes the headlines don't tell us the truth. The American dollar is in trouble. Yes, we are. You want to know what's behind this? Venezuela's oil and all these things. All of this is part of a plan. Hear me when I say this to you. The countries across the water have made up in their mind they're going to dollar, and how they're going to do so, because they're coming together. And when we become America first, we become America isolated, and we're isolating ourselves. Look at our allies right now. They don't even want us to use their airspace because they was not asked about the war. They was not
Right.
invited into the conversation, but we expect them to participate. That's not partnership. That's called dictatorship and control. But if my people will call by my name, shall humble themselves and pray, and seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven. I'll forgive their sins, and I'll heal their land. Our land need healing.
Amen. We definitely need healing. And please, please don't forget to pray for our front line, because if they fall, we all fall. And don't forget to subscribe to Hot Topics from the Soul and share it on your pages, all your social medias, and subscribe, subscribe, subscribe to YouTube. Thank you so much for joining us on another Hot Topics from the Soul.
Yes.